Coming up, we talk a little upon further review. What were some of our takeaways from the Devils' last overtime victory on the stick of one Jack Hughes? What is the update around Nico Hischier and how this presents potentially a new early season test for the New Jersey Devils? We dive in next. Baby boy, it's the DDPL, the Devil's Puck Luck podcast, where we're your hosts over here, Adam Arbrecht, over there, Danny McDonough, on a Sunday morning ahead of NFL football action. We figured let's pop in. Let's pop in when we have a few days between the next game for the Devils, Danny. We're going to dive in on a lot of things, from Timo Meier's performance to Nico Hischier's injury and just where we feel the Devils are right now with a handful of games under our belt. But we had a good time Friday night doing the Hockey Podcast Network full game watch party. I thought it went pretty well.
Oh, that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And not only that, having a Devils victory is even more fun when it comes to watching it live and being able to do it and just interacting with a lot of fans. It was a great time and looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to do some things like that on our feed as well, on YouTube specifically. So you want to make sure that you're subscribed over there. It was a good time. I will note that the back end of that game, where essentially it's like, hey, Devils are winning and you're hanging on. You say, yeah, but we've seen this before, where sometimes, oops, there's a goal. There was the the emotional lull of the Islanders scoring, and this, you did have to feel a little pit in the stomach of, well, this feels eerily familiar. And then thankfully Jack Hughes comes out and does what very few players in the league can do to get them that victory.
Yeah, if you were watching live on YouTube, you saw my real fandom come out with my excitement and then my disgust and my sadness. Listen, these things are going to happen. We've seen it over the years with giving up goals with 2 minutes or less. Unfortunately, when the Devils had those bad years, but it all comes back to the defensive performance, right? It's a matter of just cleaning things up defensively. We know the Devils are an offensive juggernaut, and all the players themselves in their post-game interviews say, "Hey, listen, we got to clean it up defensively. We know what we can do offensively. Now it's a matter of tightening up, being responsible, and getting it done."
Yeah, and we're going to get to the Nico Hischier injury, obviously, here, which it compounds on top of the Colin Miller injury and just what the Devils are going to be doing. But there was another interesting part, which I think you and I watching the game in real time, you're absorbing moment to moment. By the end of it, by that overtime session, when Timo Meier 3-on-3 does a great job with his line, holding the puck up, allowing Jack to get back on the ice and providing that scoring opportunity, we saw a lot of fans saying, hey, that's the game that you need from Timo Meier. And it's true. Those moments are what you need from him. But it was really interesting to go and look by, there's a lot of different metrics you can measure games by. And the game score composition lets you know offensive impact above average, defensive impact, including penalty kill above average, production, so player points and individual actions, and then also things like penalties, draws, faceoffs, etc. So when you look back at this one, taking a day away, and you went back and watched the 20-minute recap of the game and watched some highlights as well, do you adjust taking into consideration that end of game sequence for Timo? Do you pull back and go, that was a mostly positive game for Timo? Or do you still sit here and say it's a mixed bag? Because I'll hit where some of these numbers land.
The funny thing is that when you and I were watching it live, I was a little concerned with his defensive abilities to get back and to really be responsible. And I was concerned about the -3. Mm-hmm. We look at my plus minus sometimes a little too closely when really it doesn't matter. And I think in this case, in this game, especially with the Devils having 4 power play goals, which do not factor into the plus minus, you got to throw the plus minus. Right. Yeah, you got to throw that out the window, obviously. So, I thought Timo had a very, very good game compared to what he did the first 3 games. Do I think he can clean it up defensively? Yes. But do I think that his puck possession was very, very good? Absolutely, especially in that overtime. Do I think his physicality was good? Absolutely. Do I think he was flying all over the ice? Yes. So if I'm going to rate his game, going back and watching it and watching some of the highlights, we were watching it in real time, so obviously you're going to see some of those defensive breakdowns, which a whole, their lines and their defensive pairings just weren't good, right? You can't just blame Timo. But when you go back and you watch the game in its entirety, you see that Timo had a good game. He had a very good game to come back and do what he did when he had a really bad game 3.
Yeah, and I also think, so the other part that I looked at, in talking about Timo was specifically saying, remember, this is a guy that just got benched. This is a guy that Lindy Ruff said we need more from him. Now, what opened our eyes initially was Lindy saying that's the Timo Meier that we need, right? So physical play when the opportunities came up. I think smart hockey is mostly what Lindy Ruff is speaking to. I think his offensive game still has to go to another level. We still need to see him be more explosive. I thought he did a better job putting some shots on the net when those opportunities came, even if they were some of those low angle ones that normally you reserve for the Jack Hughes of the world. He said, hey, at least you're pulling the trigger. But when we go and look at these metrics, this is what I think is interesting about this. And we'll use it both in a positive and negative way in terms of how you want to assess players. When you go and look at Timo Meier coming out of this game, it goes from a scale of minus 1.5 all the way up to positive 3.5. On offensive impact above average, Timo Meier was nearly a minus 1.5. On his defensive penalty killing, above average, he was also a minus 0.75, both in the negative category. The one positive for him in this game came on the player production point and individual actions. That's where I think we're talking about it. And really, I'll compare it to Jack Hughes here in a second, but I think the saving grace for him, it was those late game sequences. It was the overtime sequence, because that's going to hold significant weight. You can make the case if it's, name young player X on the Devils or around the league, they don't correctly, quickly assess. We did a lot of time talking in game about Luke Hughes and batting it back and forth about him being smarter, trying to get out of the defensive zone. If you don't have the right mentality of it's 3-on-3, it's open hockey, we play better in space, let me make sure that I get Jack Hughes back on the ice here. That's my number one priority before it's about assessing my own opportunities. I think that can move, obviously, Timo in a positive direction. And I'll turn it back over to you here in a second, but I do want to highlight on Jack Hughes. And this is why you need to take in the entire spectrum, right? Not only what some of the analytics say, not only the plus minus, which is not nearly as important as we all know because it's so circumstantial, but Jack Hughes, who was absolutely elite when it comes to production, player points, individual actions, nearly the 3.5 in the positive. But he was also listed as being offensive impact above average, minus 1.25, including penalty draws, face-offs, although that can be a factor because he struggled a little bit there, almost a minus 1.5, and also the defensive impact, which you could expect because he's an offensive-minded player, also in the negative. This is where, 3 out of 4 categories saying that this player had a, quote, negative impact on the game, you have to dismiss that immediately, knowing exactly what Jack Hughes was, not only in that game, but what he is as a player on a game-to-game basis for this team.
Yeah, you got to look at those things with a grain of salt, right? Did Jack Hughes have anything negative about that game? No, you can't say anything. Again, it goes back to Jack Hughes himself saying, listen, we all got to be responsible ourselves. We all have to be defensively responsible ourselves. And he knows that he can clean up some of his game defensively, but for us as fans, he stole that game. He took that game over. 2 goals, 2 assists. He's a superstar, man. Those charts frustrate me because then you have people from around the league and you have analysts saying, well, listen, Jack Hughes was on the ice. He's been on the ice for a lot of goals against. So what's going on here? It's like, nah, listen. Jack Hughes is a phenomenon. He is absolutely unbelievable. He leads the league in points right now. So the fact
phenomenon. Phenomenon.
Exactly. The fact that he's even a negative on that chart is just laughable to me because he was absolutely outstanding, along with Jesper Bratt. Along with a lot of other players that are in the negative mark. So, it says in that chart that Timo had basically one of the most horrific games out of all the players, Devils players. So, and then you hear Lindy Ruff obviously saying, oh, he had a great game. He loved his game. He loved his physicality, which you go back and see, and you see more of that physical play on the boards from Timo, which you absolutely love. And the same with Jack. I like that Jack was really fighting for the puck too, even more so. Obviously, you're going to know that he's going to do all the razzle-dazzle and he's going to score the goals the way he does, but Jack this year in the first 4 games, I don't know if you've seen it, Adam, but he seems more physical on the puck and a little bit more on the boards, digging for pucks and loose pucks. So I love Jack's game. I think this kid is just going to get better and better and better, and it's so much fun to watch.
You mentioned there before we get into Nico Hischier and the injury there across this chart. Again, you take this and combine it with the eye test, which I actually think a lot of these would come to fruition. I'll just specifically point out guys like Curtis Lazar, like Dawson Mercer, Alexander Holtz, Siegenthaler. Like, and really that group I mentioned there. Oh, sorry, Tierney I want to put in there.
Yeah.
Tierney, Holtz, Mercer, Lazar. These are guys on both ends of the ice for this team that were primarily positive players. Didn't give you as much on the offensive end as you would like per se, but consistency. And when you combine that with having a guy like Jack Hughes on your team, you say, yes, I need consistency from you in whatever you're going to be doing on the ice, and then afford the opportunity for our superstars to go and make those plays in those key moments. Coming up here in a second, Nico Hischier did go down, exited this game, and did not return. And it kind of starts to open up now, a little bit of a growing injury list. We'll break down where he stands right now, what it means for the lines, and whether or not we think this roster is constructed to absorb an injury short term like this. Before we do that, though, we're going to talk about our friends over at DraftKings, because I've been telling you guys that the NFL season's going strong. Hopefully you're aware of that. It's October, so we all know when it starts. DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking up new customers with an offer that's even stronger, though. Bet $5 on any game this week and score $200 instantly in bonus bets, and DraftKings is not stopping there. All customers can also take advantage of a sweetener every single game day throughout October. I go over there right now, man. You want to lay a little bit of sweet cheddar? Go ahead and drop those 7.5 points that the Buffalo Bills are laying to the New England Patriots. I don't know if the New England Patriots can move the ball 5 inches, let alone put up 7.5 points. And that's my play for you this weekend. You get over on the game day greatness by downloading the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code
THPN.
New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet just $5 on the NFL. And that's promo code
THPN.
Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.100gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-3669. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hills Casino Resort. Licensed partner, Golden Nugget, Lake Charles. 21 age varies by jurisdiction. Void in our friends to the north, Ontario, Canada. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restriction terms. Responsible gambling resources as well. And so, Danny, we turn our attention over to one Nico Hischier. He leaves this game with a classic hockey injury, upper body. And he is listed as day-to-day now. We'll go through in those sequences. I think when we were doing this live, which by the way, peek behind the show curtain here, when a player gets injured in any form or fashion, Danny's immediate assessment is he's probably done for the year. Like there is no, I don't mean not on, I'm not even busting your chops. But you have a, maybe justifiably, I think like you should. It's like, it is like, oh my God, what is this going to be? Right? Like, oh no, is he going to come back out? Is he not going to come back out? And then he doesn't return to the bench at all, as reported in game by Amanda Stein. And then that starts to build it a little bit. But we were optimistic with the couple of days off that maybe it was like the ultra, conservative. You and I debated that in real time. I thought, well, you have a couple of days off, so if it's not that serious, he should be playing. Yeah. And you were optimistic that it's just the extra rest that you can give him.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the hit in the second period, the one that Polak, I think, laid down, where his head kind of went into the boards, and it looked like he kind of fell awkwardly on his shoulder, maybe head, maybe ribs. Classic upper body. We have no idea what it is. I just hope it's nothing lingering. I hope he didn't get a concussion. I hope he didn't land on his head and get a concussion. That's kind of what I worry about, because that could linger over time, over a season. I'm hoping it's just he's banged up, maybe a little bit of his shoulder, maybe his ribs, maybe he's just sore, I'm hoping, because it looked like he landed awkwardly on his side. Nico's important. I know that he's had a rough start on point production-wise in the first 4 games with no points, but he's an important guy for this team. He's an important piece for the defensive stability on the offensive side, but most importantly for faceoffs. And he's our captain. It's one of the big things that I think has become, I don't want to say an issue, but a talking point, is when you see Nico take these types of hits, clean or not, do the Devils need to do a little bit more physically going after the opposing team that hit Nico? You see it around the league. There's a lot of teams around the league that are always going to go after a player no matter what, if their captain's hit, if their superstars hit. I know Siegenthaler, with a little bit of cross-check, defending Nico the first play. Nico seems to be just like everybody on every team is coming after Nico. It's what it just feels like, So I guess before we get deeper into the injury and how it's going to impact the team, I feel that the Devils do need to be a little bit more aggressive defending Nico. And if it means taking a couple more penalties, so be it. But I want to see the Devils stick up for Nico a little bit more. Not over the
Yeah, I
top.
think
I don't want you to attack people. Like, I don't want the Devils to attack people and just have it be like melee and everybody getting thrown out of the game. But
sure.
I just want to see a little bit more from the Devils to come right to Nico's aid, like right away, when that shift is actually happening.
Yeah, I think, listen, if it's repeat offenders, inside of the game, right, time after time, I think we saw the moments, especially around Akira Schmid. You see Ball getting his glove in the face of guys, and willing to stand up in the right moments. I think if it starts to build, and I'll relate this actually to your New York Mets, right? They were a team over the last couple of seasons that were constantly getting drilled by pitchers, and it just seemed to be this statistical anomaly. Like, they always get hit. And the premise started to become, well, because we know they're not going to retaliate, right? So, we'll plunk them if we think we need to. If we want to send a message, we don't have to worry about it. I don't think it's gotten to that point yet. And to your point, it wasn't a dirty hit. It's an awkward hit, though. I think when it's your captain, that elevates it as well, right? The same way that if it's Jack Hughes, like, certain players on your roster deserve a little bit more attention when somebody lays a hit on them. The question really for me becomes, do the Devils really have the personnel for that? And then on top of which, we said this in the game, where do you want to punish a team when they're taking penalties and taking some bad hits? On the scoreboard. And
Sure.
I think, unfortunately, we may have to adjust those expectations of, as long as inside the locker room, Nico's saying, hey, listen, get him on the scoreboard, I'm fine, or whatever the case may be, right? As long as there isn't some type of, hey, why hasn't anyone got my back? Then you go out, you punish them, you win the game, and that's the best way that you can get back at these guys, understanding that if injuries start to pile up like this, you're going to have to really try to assess whether or not, are we physical enough? Are we responsive enough when some of our key players get hit? I want to go a layer deeper on this injury here too. But first, we did have live coverage of the collective Devils fan base when Nico went down there in that game and then ultimately did not return to the bench against the Islanders. Let's get a little look here.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Yeah, that was me.
That was a live look. Yeah. In unison, the entire Devils fan base, they all rose up. That was Danny McDonough live watching the game, reacting to Nico going down.
Listen, I disagree with you. I think that I think that we need to step up right there and then. When Nico's banged up like that, when he's getting big hits like that, I want someone like Lazar, I want someone like Bastian to literally go after the guy that did it. And if it means taking a penalty, I'll be okay with it. I just think that, like you said, we might not have the personnel. I think Ball could be that guy, but I'm more of the old school mentality, and I know hockey has changed a lot, but I'm more of the old school mentality where it's like, you lay a hit on my captain or my superstar player, you're going to pay for it. Period. It's just,
and again, and I'm splitting hairs here, but like, it wasn't a dirty hit. Like and we talked about this even going into the game, that Nico seems for some reason to be he's just quick enough where he just gets past them going to the boards behind the offensive goal, and that's where some of those awkward hits come for him. If this was like, when we talk about those open ice hits when your dude gets laid out, that's actually like less. It's, hey, it's open ice and that's the way it goes. But those hits, to me, when it's open skate and it's almost away from the play and away from the puck, those are the ones where I'd agree with you and say, hey, somebody has to respond here. When it's like that puck getting into the offensive zone and you're driving down there at that awkward moment, I hesitate to say, get out there and give the response, because I think, again, we see time after time, look how good the power play has been for the Devils early in this season. Don't take away that momentum you get from that. And I agree that there will be a point, right? 10 games into the season, 15 games into the season, I'm going to all of a sudden say, all right, now I'm going over to Dan's side of the ledge here. Somebody needs to hit somebody, right? Because it will build up. It's too early in the year for me to feel that way right now. And I'm also comfortably assuming that you're also referencing, like, this is year over year. This isn't just the first 4 games.
Yeah, no, it's just, right. Yeah, Nico's been taking a lot of big hits over the last couple of years. It's, we saw it last year with Florida too, when, the injury happened to Barkov, where they thought that it was intent to injure with Nico, and they just kept going after Nico when it was just, it was just terrible situation. It wasn't like Nico was trying to do anything in the face-off dot there. So it's the same now. It's, could Polak maybe held up because Nico was in a vulnerable position and kind of pushed his elbow into his head? I don't think there was intent to injure or intent to hurt him there at all. Don't get me wrong, but Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Not like the Paul Mary stick to the throat of Timo Meier, when they're jousting down the right side, and you're like, well, that feels like somebody is just, and again, Timo leaning his shoulder back in,
Oh,
whatever.
Martin with Martin.
Martin, yeah, sorry, Martin, yeah, because you know why too? Because those plays as well. Again, this is what I think is the delicate balance. You talk about the modernized NHL, but these moments are hard. You mentioned holding up there on that hit. It's so hard to ask players and ask skaters, hey, now adjust yourself in real time. Nobody, again, players that go out with the intent to hurt and intent to have dirty hits, I don't want to see those guys. But oh man, dang, it was a bang bang play. We're both racing for the puck. He gets his shoulder dipped at the wrong time. I drill him. You don't want that to happen. But unfortunately, too, unlike say the NFL, those plays happen at point of contact, and then the play ends. And the opposition, you could get a better sense of like, oh man, you're all right. Let me help you up. There's no time for that in the NHL. So those big hits happen, and I think that's actually what inspires frustration, because it's like, well, you don't see the guy look over. Oh, Nico, are you okay? Let me help you up. The puck's rolling around the boards now, so the game doesn't stop for those moments either, which I think builds up that frustration.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. And now it's now you move on past it. We knew that injuries were going to be a factor in any NHL season, and now with Nico out, looks like Hall is going to be back because he's going to be practicing Monday. From what Lindy Ruff said, he skated on his own yesterday. Today's Sunday, so that is a good thing, because if Nico was out and Holla was out and with Nosek out, you're struggling a little down the center ice position there. So it's a good thing Holla's going to be back. Now you kind of adjust things with McLeod, being back on the third line, probably putting Holla up to that second line. So we just hope, again, we hope that Nico is going to be day to day, and it's not going to be a long absence from him.
And that's where we bring up our final, what is the early season test. We talked about what would it be? Physicality, getting these line combinations sorted out, but something that we didn't have to think about as much last season, though we speculate that Jack Hughes was hurt for a large portion of the season, which is what slowed him down. Ultimately, the early season test is the injuries. You had Miller go down, obviously, so you're thinking about, well, was Smith always the plan there on the final pairing? Did you want to have competition? You had Holla go down. Looks like he's going to come back. Lindy Ruff, when Amanda Stein asked, he said, we'll see how this unfolds with Nico and where Holla is at. Utica has some injuries right now, and that they're sorting out themselves. That would be Hataka. That would be Nemec. So we'll sort these things out come Monday. A call-up shouldn't be necessary. This is Amanda Stein saying, if either Nico or Holla return. So maybe they narrowly avoid this with some returning players, but that there's a both and here. First, did you feel like when Nico went out that McLeod and then Lazar shifting over, and there was different moments, different guys taking faceoffs? Did you feel comfortable with the way the Devils were able to adjust on the fly there and say, okay, we can manage this in the short term, knowing that we don't necessarily have guys to call up right now if we needed a spot start?
Yeah, short term. Short term is the key words right there. I thought McLeod and I thought Lazar did a phenomenal job stepping up, especially McLeod. Granted, he took that bad penalty at the end of the game against the Islanders, in Fury 3. He adjusted. He played a great game. I don't want to just look at that penalty saying, the terrible game now. No, played a great game, just made one mistake. Lazar, listen, I give Lazar, Bastion, and Tierney a lot of credit.
Tierney played really well that game, yeah.
Yeah, that fourth line played absolutely incredible. They were really chewing up a lot of minutes, in the Islanders zone, which is what we need from our fourth line, right? Physicality. They were physical. Bastion throwing some hits. Bastion shooting the puck, too, which we like to see, getting into those dirty areas in front of the net. Lazar clearing up some pucks in front of the net for him. So I want to see that line stay together, which it looks like it's going to because of the injuries. Switching around, putting Holla on the second line, putting McLeod back on the third line. I think we're going to be okay. Am I concerned long term? Yes, if these injuries are if Nico's absence will be big. Holla staying healthy will be important, obviously.
Yeah.
So Nosek, I think he's an important piece, but obviously he's not going to have an impact, obviously like Nico's going to. But more injuries are going to happen. People are going to get banged up. This is the NHL. Yeah. It's going to happen. Playing 82 games is very rare in this league. There's going to be times where players are just banged up with that atypical upper body injury, need a couple games to rest. So I'm hoping that for Holla, that's all it was, because I know it was a nagging injury in the preseason that kept him sidelined. So now I hope he comes back. I hope he's healthy. I hope Nico the same thing. I hope it's, at most a couple weeks just for him to get healthy. I'm going to speculate here, Adam, and I'm going to say it's a rib injury and he's just very sore, which is going to just put him in a lot of pain. So, I'm hoping that that's the case. But to answer your question, I think the Devils can definitely survive this, and still be that top 5 NHL team with their offensive abilities. You see it with our superstars. I don't think Jack and I don't think Jesper are going to let up. I really do think that Jack, if he stays healthy, can easily get 110 points in this league. I really do. I think he's that good of a player, and I think he's going to continue to carry this team along with Jesper when they need him to. When the Devils aren't playing their game, they're not playing their best game, their best 60-minute game. We have the ability now with our superstars to win games 4-3 because Jack is scoring 2 goals or because Jesper's scoring 2 goals. That is such a special thing for Devils fans to be able to have right now, and for the next 5 to 10 years to come, to be able to know that we can rely on our superstars when we have the injuries, when we're struggling a little bit, on our bottom 2 lines, say, that we can pick up these victories and we could still stem the tie until our entire team gets healthy.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, too, that with Haula potentially coming back here, but as of this is going on Saturday's practice, and we'll still have before Montreal's game, obviously, coming up here, the lineups that they ran at practice, they had a Toffoli, Hughes, Myers top line, then Palat, McLeod, and Bratt on the second line, Mercer on the third line with Tierney and Holtz, and then Lazar and Bashin. They only ran 11 offensive 11 offensive players in that particular practice, and then the typical guys listed there defensively. So you're waiting for these things to come back. I think what we will discuss before the next game for the Devils is, what does this mean when we start shuffling these things and we look at players like an Alexander Holtz, right? Like, it's so funny that he was such a talking point in the offseason, and now it's like, I think he's played well, and now you're like, oh my God, could there be anything worse than having him just constantly be shuffled with different players and different pairings and maybe relying on McLeod in certain instances, or however they're going to do that? And it extends all the way through this list as well. So we'll see how things shake out here as more practice information comes out, and then we'll put together our first preview as we dive back into game action this week. Bottom line is the Devils got their second win. They're 2-1-1 on the year. So you feel like, again, we've said this now going through these first 4 games, hasn't been perfect. You can make the case the 4th game was the best total game that they've put together, and there's still plenty for them to clean up. So the best teams in the league find ways to keep winning while still figuring out how they want to be ultimately and how they want to manage through some injuries. We'll provide you with all those great updates, and that's why you got to get over to YouTube at Devils Puck Luck. Make sure you're subscribed, turn on the alerts. Again, another live watch party is coming, potentially on the network, potentially on our feed. Podcast feed, as well for you. At Danny the Face, at Adam Armbrecht, and at NJ Devils PL on Twitter, and then at Devils Puck Luck on TikTok, on Snapchat, on Facebook, on Instagram, all those great places, Danny. Until next time, why don't you take us out, man? Top of your head, what's your big closeout?
You can't put the pressure on
Not
me
the
like
best
that.
color commentary man in the business for nothing, folks. We'll see you next time.